You're listening to the Complete Human podcast, hosted by co-founders Janna Breslin and Evan DeMarco. We share authentic conversations about wellness, longevity, personal growth, and biooptimization, along with inspiring stories that encourage community and social responsibility. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Has COVID left you feeling a little off your performance game? Do you wonder if you're truly healthy? We did a lot. Training looks a lot different than it did a year ago, and having a tool that really gives us valuable insights to improve our health and performance was essential. Whoop and their new Whoop 3.0 has the technology and the science to evaluate your sleep, training, and recovery, and provide valuable insights on how to improve real health and performance. Their HRV and respiratory rate calculator has even been shown to predict a COVID-19 infection. Now, more than ever, we need real tools to monitor and improve our health. That's why we are excited to offer Complete Human listeners this great deal. Go to join.whoop.com/completehuman for a $30 discount. That's join.whoop.com/completehuman for a $30 discount. Hey guys, Janna Breslin here again. Most of you have heard me speak on the benefits of beets. Beets are well known as a powerful superfood and help the body create nitric oxide, the miracle molecule that supports a healthy cardiovascular system and sexual function. As an athlete, the nitric oxide boosting benefits help me power through workouts better than any artificial pre-workout I've ever taken. Now, this is why we created Complete Human Res Beet. You get all of the benefits of organic beets with additional anti-aging support from fermented resveratrol. Resveratrol is a longevity gene activator and is something I have turned to for years to help support anti-aging and optimal health. If you're not a fan of the taste of beets, we've got you covered with our all-natural and delicious dark cherry flavor. I take Resbeet twice a day, and I have to say, I feel incredible. Head on over to store.completehuman.com and enter the code podcast at checkout to get 20% off.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Complete Human podcast with your hosts,
Janna Breslin
and Evan DeMarco. I'm giddy on this one.
We both are.
We're both giddy. So, it's kind of fun. There are times that we kind of go out into the world and we throw out requests to interview some pretty prominent and prolific people, especially as it pertains to a lot of the things that we talk about. So when Janna told me a couple weeks ago that she just said, looked over and says, I've got Byron. I'm like, Lord Byron, are we talking about poetry? I'm like, what's going on here? She's like, no, Byron's going to be on the show. I'm like, there's no way. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to talk a lot about who this person is and her past, but I'm just so excited to welcome Byron Katie to our show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Janna.
Of course.
So for our audience who may or may not know who you are, who haven't seen, the Oprah episode, who haven't seen, who've been living under a rock, quite frankly, tell us who you are.
Well, I don't know how familiar you are with me, but when you ask me to tell you who I am, just to play around a little, okay? What difference would that make? What difference would it make? Whatever I say and do, you're going to form a belief about. It's like you'd imagine who you believe me to be. So who am I? So far in our short time together, who am I? Who you believe that to be is all I can be to you. It's all I can ever be to you. So who I believe you to be is who you are to me. Now, if I don't feel connected with you, and I mean, in the largest sense of that word, connected, meaning if I'm not thinking he is this and she is that and they are this and they, with that attitude in my mind, and we do it silently as well as verbally when we talk about each other. But who I believe you to be has to do with me and how I believe you to be. It doesn't have to do with you. So if I feel really connected to you, which as it happens, I do, I can accredit that to this mind. Now, if I am fearful, it really, who am I believing that you are? Who am I believing that I am? So the work I bring is, it takes a lot of courage, because we're looking very closely at ourselves. So to do that, I invite people to intentionally notice your judgments on another human being. I'd like to say mother, father, sister, brother, neighbor, whoever, whatever arises to you. And if you feel hurt or angry or envy, jealousy, small or more than any of that, then I invite you to identify those thoughts that the ego is putting out. And then to write those thoughts down. So now we have stopped the ego on paper. We've moved it from our mind, what we're like, for example, what I'm thinking and believing about him or her. I've become still enough to identify those thoughts, put them on paper, and then I question them. So what I bring is a way of inquiry. It involves 4 questions and then what I call turnarounds that we meditate in and that we contemplate. And it's a way of identifying the cause of all our suffering, all the suffering in our world. And I'm talking about a freedom that someone else, no matter how much they love or care for us, it's the kind of freedom that can't be given to us. It's something within ourself that is free. It's available. The ego just keeps offering it up. And these 4 questions can give us can give us a life experience of not just being more awake, but to be at home in the world, in the absence of war and criticism and ways of doing the same old war on the planet. And if I am arguing with another human being, it gives me a practice where I can look to myself to see my part, wake up to it, and then my next conversation is much more relaxed, much more open, or not. But it's always, I call it the work. It's a process.
Well, and I
Really.
think as we've just gone through political season and social media and really COVID has exacerbated this conflict that seems to exist between people.
Mm.
How does the work, and we're going to get into that in a second, how does the work that you promote as a guide, as a shepherd, shall we say,
Mhm.
allow people to really step out of that egocentric place where it's me against you, there's a winner, there's a loser, and start to embrace the freedom that comes from us all being, dare I say, humans?
Yeah, yeah. And I just notice what I'm thinking and believing about you in that situation where I was blaming you or upset or uncomfortable, angry, stressed out. I identify what I was thinking and believing then about you. I put it on paper and then I question those beliefs. And it really is the truth that set me free. It was just my truth. And people are finding this as they sit in these questions worldwide. And I love how it's passed on from one to the other to the other. It's almost like an organism that's mutating or something. It's just like igniting one to the other to the other. And that's how it's passed on. It's passed on like there's something about that person I really trust. And what I love is here in this world, we have all kinds of modalities, and I just bring one of them. We have religions, we have like Buddhism, we have, oh my goodness, um, Catholics, Protestants, all these ways of discovering what we're here for, what we're here to discover.
So how did you come to this place? Can you give us a little backstory without judgment from our audience? But how did you uncover these 4 questions?
Well, I was after more than a decade of very deep depression, very suicidal, just like waking up in the mornings and being aware that I'm alive and breathing, and it was just like a prayer for death. I tried everything to, let's see, I may say now, to break that spell, and it just got worse and worse. And also agoraphobic, fear of even leaving my bedroom, more or less my home. Very often it was. So I don't even know how to say it, but when I bring this work to people, it's because I don't want anyone to suffer like that. And like that being a state of mind. And I had no idea. I thought that it was my physical appearance, or it was my attitude, which I couldn't change. I was just guilty. I was just a ball of guilt, and about body, mind, people, just confusion. And I'd like to say confusion's the only suffering, because I'm coming out of experience, my own. But so one day, as I lay sleeping on the floor, and I was so full of self-loathing, I didn't believe I deserved a bed to sleep in. So I slept beside my bed on the floor. And this particular morning, after sleeping all night long, I was still asleep. A cockroach crawled over my foot. That I don't always like saying that. It's just what happened. But a cockroach crawled over my foot, and I opened my eyes. I just woke up immediately. And before the ego could fill in the space, I saw how I saw how the world was created. I saw how my world was created, and I began to laugh. It was like I got the joke. And in that experience, these questions were born. So that way we can all have what I had on the floor, the awareness that I had on the floor, because it can't be for one special person, something that liberating, that powerful, that truth I discovered has to belong to all of us. And after more than 3 decades of spreading these 4 questions, it is one passing it on to the other, to the other, to the other, as I said earlier. So the first question is, we look at what we're thinking and believing, and we isolate it on what I call a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. And this work is always 100% free on thework.com, on byronkatie.com. And it's, how to do it is there. But I invite people to identify what they were thinking and believing in a situation where they were hurt or angry, confused, to identify what they were thinking and believing. And it's easy on that worksheet, and anyone can download it. And then there are 6 questions there, and you just answer them, and then you question them, and that's it.
I remember when I first saw the questions, it was like a light bulb that went off in my head. You can take any thought that you have and apply these questions, and it seems like it's such an easier way to get to the root of the meaning and like the root of what it is. And it's so much power behind that.
Oh my goodness, because it's what the questions call forward, what is true for you, not the world, but what is true for you. And it shifts identity. And in a way that we always come out more aware, kinder, with a deeper understanding. And it is a practice.
And it's kind of funny that, when you talk about this, there's a scientific element that's really emerged in the last, let's say 10, 15 years in quantum reality, that we create our own reality. And you've been doing this for 30 years based off of an experience that you had on the floor. Scientists have been doing this for the last 15 years based off of some of the most advanced, work in physics and quantum reality. And there's really this merging of what is true in science, true in what you've been doing in this work, and how those are so intertwined in
Yeah,
how we perceive the world and how we create our reality.
yeah, exactly so.
So run us through the questions, right? So I think our audience would love to understand a little bit more about this, and maybe I was kind of thinking maybe we apply this to something specific to us.
Okay.
And it's funny because you said being on the floor, and it just reminded me that when I first got divorced, I had this mental block where when I moved out of my family home, I couldn't sleep in the bed of the rented apartment.
Yeah.
And it was this weird guilt slash if I slept there, that was admitting that I'd failed, admitting that my marriage was over, that I was a bad father, I was a bad
Yeah.
husband. And
Yeah.
so I slept on this really uncomfortable IKEA couch for like a month, and I think I still have back problems because of it. So I want to walk through these questions. Just what do they look like, and how does someone really start to identify a problem and then utilize these questions to work through this process?
Find a situation where you were like when you were sleeping there in the way you described, and find a situation where you were sleeping there for the reasons that you just shared with us. And what were you thinking and believing about your marriage, about the failure of your marriage, about your child, about your ex-wife? What were some of your thoughts?
First, that I was a horrible person.
Okay,
That I was a
so
horrible.
let's look at that.
Okay.
Okay, and then there are 4 questions, and then we flip them to just meditate in those. But you're a horrible person. Now, be there in that situation on that IKEA bed, sleeping there. Okay. Okay, so be there now. You're a horrible person. Is it true? You were believing it then, but be there now. Get sane. You're a horrible person. Now, the answer comes out of your integrity as you look at it now. And yes and no are equal. They never compete. We're just looking for the truth. You're a horrible person. Is it true?
No.
So just feel that and give it space. He could use that. There are 2 yous, the one here, the one there. He could use that. He's living in you. Now witness in that situation how you react. What happens when you believed the thought, I'm a horrible person? Get in touch with the emotional.
I started to embody that belief. I
Okay.
started to act accordingly.
So you just answered, how do you react when you believe the thought? It became a part of your identity. And you lived it out as though it were true. And when you get in touch with your emotions, no wonder your back still hurts.
Yeah.
We carry those identities who we believe we are, and it's so subtle. We're not in touch with it, but it's not subtle at all.
No, it's not.
So now, be there now. You're a terrible person. Be there now just the way you were, only without the thought, I'm a horrible person. Notice the surface that you're lying on, that you lay on, and look up at the ceiling, look to the left and right. Other than what you're thinking and believing, are you okay?
Yes.
So we've looked at the 4 questions. Okay, now let's turn it around. We just try them on. They're not something to believe or disbelieve. We're just trying them on in that situation. You're a horrible person. What is the opposite of horrible?
Noble, great,
Wonderful,
wonderful,
horrible, wonderful,
lovable.
lovable. Okay, so which one of those feels like you want to look at it?
Lovable.
Okay, so I'm a horrible person in that situation. Turn it around. I'm a lovable person. Okay, so now what do you find lovable about you in that situation?
My commitment to my daughter. My belief that I could build a better life for her.
That's a
So, yeah.
pretty wonderful person. I have one. Would you like to hear it?
I'd love to.
Please.
You're giving him a place to sleep. It may not be the best, but look, you're resting him. You're feeding him. You're watering him. I'm a lovable person.
That's powerful.
It really is the truth that sets us free. And you can meditate in that. I'm a wonderful person. You can go back and, like, I can go back to my divorce and I can see, as painful as it was, that it released him to be free of me. I mean, if you love someone, and that's our nature, only the ego would deny it. If you love someone, it's like, I gave him his life back. If I love someone, I want to give them what I can. And these are way after the fact, but the freedom in I'm a lovable person, and then to experience it as I witness you doing, as I query that situation and experience the answers, allow them to experience me really. Then I find self-love, and that transfers from me to every human being in my life, whether they recognize it or not. It's never the point. I'm a lovable person. I'm the one that lives with me. My life is free. I'm free to be that lovable person.
For some reason, I feel like I have to write an apology letter to IKEA.
To IKEA. I think one of the last question, I remember it along the lines of, what would you be without this thought? And in my opinion, I think that is one of the most profound things to even think about. I mean, this is self-questioning, and if you can think of yourself like, okay, who would I be without this thought? What are my capabilities without these thoughts or these feelings? I remember asking myself that in certain circumstances, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, other than what you're thinking and believing, find one moment in your life you have not been okay. It doesn't happen.
this feels a lot like time travel. I mean,
It is time travel.
Mm.
We're collapsing time in this process, and that leaves us timeless.
is that the,
It just flips.
yeah, and all I think about is that scene from Interstellar at the end where he's like in that thing that without that box without time. It's like you can almost reframe any moment of your existence with these questions.
Mm-hmm.
As
Let's
long
see.
as it's authentic.
Yeah, of course. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're talking about here is,
Yeah.
those are moments that have defined a lot of the choices that I've made. Those are moments that I've had to feel like I've struggled with. Divorce is always a trauma. I think it's always
Yeah.
something that we
Yes.
always struggle with for years. And
I think that it's a killer for some of us. Yeah, it kills our, a killer meaning the loss of ourselves, and as loving, caring human beings, our ego won't allow us to be as in touch with that as, other than egoically. But there's a flip to that where it's authentic. If your daughter says, "Dad, who are you really?" You can say, "I'm a lovable human being."
that's powerful.
And I discovered that in my love for you.
It's that's incredible. And it just reminds me, it's like there's so much ego in so many of the decisions that we make, like, and especially in divorce, right? I can't tell you the number of people. And we actually interviewed one of on another podcast of mine, Single Daddy Daily. We interviewed Catherine Dixon in Utah, who talked a lot about this.
Isn't she lovely?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about divorce and how ego impacts that, and even to the extent that people like, I never really loved that person. Like, that is so much ego talking. Like, of course you loved that person, you married that person. And if you accept the fact that you love them, then it doesn't diminish the time that you had. But so many of us live in that ego place where, like, this was my first love, I didn't really love them, I didn't know what love was. It's like, why do we have to tarnish those moments in our lives by denigrating that relationship and removing what was authentic about it at the time?
It's the ego talking us, and and it's identity. To the ego, holding up that identity is necessity. It's not an option not to. It's necessity. Ego meaning mind, and mind is not a physical thing. So how can an ego be something if it isn't identified as an object, a body, a physical? So of course it doesn't rest. It's I, me, I, and then there's me, and then there's you, I think, and you are this and you are that, I think. That makes that you in my world. I'm right, you are wrong. Dun, dun. Ego, I. We wake up in the morning, for example, and the ego doesn't sleep. It's I'm awake. I am late for work. I want coffee. I. And that is, we just don't have thoughts that are not about I am.
So is it possible to remove the ego from the equation and not, because I think ego, there's also the awareness, right? I am this body, I am in this moment, I need my morning coffee. So when you remove that ego, through the work that you're doing, does self-awareness increase or does it decrease? And I don't know if that's a quantifiable scale, but when we talk about that identity to something, that's kind of what ego gives us that anchor to, is this physical
Well,
self.
I'm awake to what is kind and what is beautiful. And if I don't see everything as that, then I would question what I'm believing, because I am seeing things out of the true nature of everything. We can call it the heart. And it doesn't, it's so wide open. It cost us nothing. We give up nothing. We gain everything. For example, maybe someone would stand in front of me with the whole world watching kind of scenario and just throw terrible sounding judgments at me. And to the way I would see it is, to them, I am that. And if one of them burns, they've given me a great gift. I can see that that's a little unfinished business in me. There is no one and nothing in this world that isn't here to wake us up to reality. This is, I call this like an earth school. And everything and everyone in it are my teachers.
Wow.
I definitely feel that every day. I don't know. Personally, as I feel like I'm getting older and kind of doing more self-questioning, I absolutely feel that. I mean, I believe that people are here for a reason. You meet certain people, you're connected with certain people to show you something, to teach you something. But also through that, and also with what you do, Byron, and what you teach with the work, is that freedom is also within us too. And I think that's what's so empowering about these questions is you
We're
can
just
ask yourself.
tapping into wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Oh, honey, I love that. I love that for you, and I love that for all of us so much.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, and it actually brought up a few questions for myself, like can you self-question too much? Is there a limit here? Could there ever be something negative that comes out of questioning yourself too much?
You know, I think so for some of us, but eventually, um, I just wanted to know the truth. I didn't want to get wise or smart or learn how to do life better. I wanted to know what's true. So when I ask, is it true? As you obviously experience, it's a real question. It's not, I'm just going to question and the pain's going to end. Question, the pain's going to, it's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is waking up to our true nature and the
Every
true
day.
nature of everything. And to sit in, is it true? Someone like, they don't care about me, for example, to sit in that, is it true? Just that one question I might meditate in for, who knows, 30 minutes, an hour? I'm in no hurry because I understand that what meets that question, I'm not going to manipulate. And a lot of tears can come of that. It's a strange world to witness a shift in identity, and the way taking one's time in it is to grow. It's not to grow fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's to grow. And that's an open mind, that growing, is an extension of oneself, and it's without limit. And it's just a brilliant way to live. I think it was Einstein or some great thinker said, an unquestioned life isn't worth living. And I've certainly come to understand that.
Well, and I love that you call it the work, right? Instead of the pill or
The solution.
it's
right.
I think we've become so adept at society of thinking, well, I'll just take a pill and all of these problems will go away, or I'll drink, I'll have my martini or a glass of wine. But
yeah, it's
freedom and
the
truth
work
doesn't
is
come
such
from
an unappealing thing to call it, but I couldn't name it. I couldn't, what name can you put on that inquiry? But how can you distinguish it? The work, I had no name for it. And it was my work, but I couldn't call it mine. When something is valuable, it belongs to all of us.
Byron, that I love that you say that. Then when we have uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, it's question it. Don't run from it. Don't avoid it. What is the importance of questioning thoughts like that?
Well, you can do it on the run, but as a practice to really sit in, what I invite people to do is every morning, fill in a judge a neighbor worksheet and sit in at least one thought or assumption on the sheet. And might take you a month to sit in to question an entire worksheet. Maybe you do it in one session, but it's not a matter of how much time I spend in it. I'm not in a hurry. Like, they don't care about me. That's, how do I react when I believe the thought? I'm going to, my whole life, how they say life flashes in front of you, meditating and they don't care about me. When I'm speaking of a specific group, let's say, and I'm sitting in that, is it true? And then I can see their faces. I can see, sitting at home alone, their faces. I can see the remarks that I think they're thinking about me. All of this, and is it true? And then how do I react when I believe the thought? I can see like that the image, the futured image where they're going to tell other people, they're going to talk about me again. And I see the future where my reputation's ruined. And I see the future where people aren't speaking to me. The ego just, and you see that in your mind's eye, and you can see how compelling the ego. And then you see the past where, the same things only in reverse, where it has happened, and that movie going. So that's how I react. I, meaning anyone that sits in inquiry, when I believe the thought, the ego has to offer up the movie of past, future, past, future. It's how, and then what is causing my emotions? Is it them, or is it this movie of past, future going on? So I am the cause of all emotional. I'm being egoed, image, imagination, imagining. So, who am I without the thought? No, I wanted to move back a moment. So how do I react when I believe the thought? Everything I said, but then it goes into the movie of they don't care about me in the past. So now I've moved from one group to another group the ego is offering up as proof. So now I believed it then, I believe it now. So then that movie of then is cementing in the belief I'm holding now. So when you look back all the way from like kindergarten or preschool, all the way up, they don't care about me. All those things just kind of flood in. It's the ego just holding its position as object. And so it's so mind-blowing to sit in a really slowed down, is it true? How do I react when I believe the thought? And in that same situation, who would I be without it? It's nothing to rush, because it's not, as you mentioned earlier, it's not even a pill. It's I don't call it the work for nothing. And it takes stillness.
This reminds me so much of a psychology study that I read, and it was about um, the number of interrogations that led to confessions, police interrogations. And these police would interrogate these suspects and give them details from the past. And it got to the point that the suspect, even though they had no connection to a crime whatsoever, would ultimately start to believe that they committed a crime and then admit to it. And it's like just that seed of saying, like, you were here, you did this, you did this. Like the ego actually started to believe what the police were telling them. And it's, so much for us is that when we live in that past, when we live in that kind of rumination, augmented reality versus, this is the truth, how does that shape the entire trajectory of our future?
Yeah. There's a moment in that scenario, let's say, where they're convincing him, like if I'm that they're convincing me, doing everything to convince me. And then there's that moment I believe it. And that's where the transfer takes place. So inquiry breaks that spell. Until then, like you, I am the identity. I'm guilty. It's my identity.
Now, Byron, is freedom is mental emotional freedom the ability to self-question? I'm curious what the word freedom means to you in the context of our mental and emotional health.
Balance is my thing. For me, just to answer your question, just raw, the absence of fear. It's a mediocre life. It's what people may see as a mediocre life. It's a life of balance, no more, no less, just balance. Am I good with am I good in my life? Good meaning balanced, comfortable. And this is beyond the physical. This is a state of mind we're talking about. And if I'm walking, I'm in the kitchen, I'm walking by the kitchen sink, and there are dirty dishes in the sink, and I'm not okay with that, meaning it's his turn to do it. He knows it's his turn. We talked about it this morning, yada, yada, yada. So what I'm thinking and believing are the cause of my discomfort, not the dishes in the sink and not him. This is what I'm just walking through the kitchen, and the ego hits. We believe it, in other words, attached to it. Then that's not balance. He is wrong and I am right, and it's not fair, and the simplest things. So inquiry, and you may have noticed it, Janna, it true becomes silent. It would be like I walk by the sink, the dishes are there, it's his turn to do it, everything, but I walk by the sink, all of that's there. But I'm awake to being dreamed by the ego. I'm not fooled. So it's like, it's his turn to do the dishes turns into, it's his turn to do the dishes. I have to do it all the time. I have to do it all the time. You hear the question mark on the end? It just becomes a part of like a secret life that is visible to anyone's eye over time, the absence of suffering in a human being that isn't attacking another human being.
It's breaking the prison of our mind.
Very,
because I mean, Buddhists really believe that all life is suffering, especially with judgment. And then, when you break free from that, you ultimately transcend. So I think there's some incredible similarities, but I don't, in looking at Buddhism, I don't know if they ever really gave people the tools that you've given people. Is how do you get into that
some
rhythm?
people have referred to this as fifth peak Buddhism. I don't really know what that means, but it's the Four Noble Truths, as I've been told, is there's suffering in the world. I think we can all agree to that. There's a
Yes.
cause for suffering, second noble truth. And the cause of our suffering is what we're thinking and believing. There's a way out of this suffering. And for me, that is to question, identify the cause of suffering. What am I thinking and believing about you, me, them, it? And to question it. And then here's how they have is Buddhism. And what I was shown on the floor is the work. And I've had I so this is maybe just Buddhism with questions. I have no idea, but I could also say it's Protestant. It's that it's something and it's nothing, but it's beautiful, it's free, and it's without harm.
And that's the most important part.
Absolutely.
You had a bunch of, I think, questions.
I did. And one thing that keeps coming up for me is why are people avoid dealing with and thinking about uncomfortable thoughts and questions. Why is it that many people avoid certain thoughts? And if maybe something negative comes up, why is it that maybe for the most part they would turn away from that or avoid thinking about it?
Well, you could give me an example of some of those thoughts, but like what's an example? I mean, why do we avoid it? Because let's see, why would we avoid it?
Like maybe if there's something that's associated with a lot of pain, or maybe I've talked to my friends about this before, because I went to therapy for the first time this year, and I told some of my other girlfriends, oh, like it's helped me, maybe it'd be helpful for you, and they're like, oh no, I can't sit there and talk about my feelings or sit there with my thoughts. Like that's uncomfortable, that's painful.
They say that because they really believe it. They're harboring things inside that they're not ready to speak of. It'd be horrifying for them to even consider it. Whereas you are it's time for you. It's, you understand the power of self-inquiry, of self-reflection.
Right. I guess that makes sense. And that also makes me think, what is the cause of all suffering? Why do people suffer? And is it only mental? Is it only emotional?
Well, if we look at how we react when we believe the thought, like he hurt my feelings, how do I react or they hurt my feelings, they don't care about me. The next time I meet one of them or go to that gathering again, I'm a whole different identity than the first time I went. I wasn't believing that onto them. So now they are making me feel uncomfortable. No, what I'm thinking and believing about them is making me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But when I question it, I don't know what they're thinking and believing, but what am I thinking and believing about them? Now that's the cause of my discontent. That's the cause of my problem with them is would be my unquestioned thoughts.
I often think about this as the number of conversations that I've been in over the years with people who speculate about another person's thoughts, feelings, motivations. They did this to me because, and I've always kind of understood that, like, well, how do you know, right? How do you know why that person did that?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have insights into that motivation. And I think now more than ever, there's so much of this conversation taking place with people of this person did this because. And the reality is you can't know that. Half the time that person doesn't know why they did something. How can you assume that? And so I love this work that you talk about in freeing people from the judgments that really isolate them, whether that's in social settings, whether that's, at work, whether that's in their relationships, their marriages, whatnot.
Or just being with ourselves on an Akaya, in an Akaya position. This is, other than what we're thinking and believing, My goodness, what a beautiful world. A world where you were 100% supported with everything. I mean, even your skin, your hair, the floor that held the couch, I mean, there's nothing there, and there's nothing in this world that is not here to support us. And we're asleep to the support of all that's beautiful, and there's nothing that's not.
One of the things that I was thinking about in reading your books and, even just watching some of your interviews is that you really have an approach that's very similar to what we are seeing in the psychedelic community. Is that when you strip back this ego, when you recognize the connection that we all have, that that our perceptions, our realities, it's very similar, but you encourage people, or you have the tools to get people to go down a very similar path without doing acid or.
Yeah, this is like being on acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't, I don't think I have a friend that hasn't, but it just happens that I haven't. But I'm perfectly open to it. It's just that there's mind is unlimited. It's
and
unlimited.
and
And
I've talked to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's it.
Yeah, and in that experience, in experiences like that I've talked about, it's when you strip away the body, the physical, and you're left with an unlimited potential of your mind. You see things in a way that, like, we all crave that, right? And every person that has had those experiences, they come away almost afraid that they're going to lose connection with that experience. And I think one of the things that you offer people is that ability to not have to go to LSD or ayahuasca or psilocybin, but just to sit with a simple couple questions and acknowledge, and when you do that, it's very similar to stripping away the physical and getting into that metaphysical where we are unlimited potential.
And it's something we can have exactly what you're experiencing in our own time as a lifetime, just to live in that trip without having to come down, and being willing to and looking forward to coming down, because it's time for an is it true? How do I react when I believe the thought? Who would I be without it? Wake up, wake up to reality. It's acid as needed.
That's definitely a good way
But
to put it.
it is a trip.
Mhm.
It is a trip. It's
It's an awakening, it seems
it's an
like.
awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the real deal. It's not drug induced, and so it keeps its power.
And
Yeah.
I was just about to say it really highlights the fact that we are such powerful beings. There is so much powerful and potential within all of us. And, it might seem so simple just to ask yourself these four questions when you're going through something or thinking about something.
Mhm.
But just as someone who's experienced that myself, to ask questions on certain things that I've thought or anything like that, it blows your mind.
Blows your mind.
Yeah.
Acid on demand.
Acid on demand. That might have to be our show title.
I think so. Katie, we obviously would love for people to engage with you more. I know that they can follow you on the website, and we'll put all that information in the show notes. Where else can people find you?
I do. I sit with people all over the world for 1 hour Pacific time, 9 to 10 a.m. And every morning we just hang out and do the work. And it's yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I started in May. I canceled everything on my schedule, everything. It was a lot. Canceled it and began just to open to whatever contributions or nothing, and have continued that since March, and and yeah, it's something beautiful. We just all sit together for an hour, and yeah, it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Gonna have to check that out.
I love that.
So we'll put all that information in the notes as well, so people can find you there. Any plans to travel again, or are you just kind of hunkered down for a while?
Well, I mind travel. I think we all do. Um, I haven't made any commitments. Well, some commitments, but on their Zoom. So, so here we are.
More digital traveling,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
astral navigation for the modern era.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, well, we're all virtual. There's nothing that's not.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we're finding that more and more.
Right. Absolutely. Byron, thank you so much for being with us today. I know
Oh,
this has just been super inspiring for both Evan and myself. We've definitely looked up to you in the work that you do every day. So we appreciate what you do for us and for the globe, for the planet.
oh, thank you. I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you.
Yes, did
Us
we?
as well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Complete Human Podcast with your host
Janna Breslin.
and Evan DeMarco. Every now and then we get to bring you someone who's truly magical and whose work, I think inspires the next generation. And we were lucky to have Byron Katie to do that with us today. So make sure to tune into this episode, share it with anybody who could be using who needs some, help in their lives.
Yes.
Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there where we're dropping videos constantly. And until then, we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.